Hello, everybody. Welcome to, I was going to say the Ed Sales Elevation Experience because that's what I've been saying all week because we've been doing a lot of coaching with our cohorts. But welcome to Breaking the Grade. I have a great guest today. And I don't know if Beatrice knows this, but I have a background in TV. And so live TV. I mean, like, Ron Burgundy type newscasting TV. And so I'm very used to kind of like getting on that set, just throwing that microphone on and going. So Beatrice got here at about 11 o'clock Mountain Time, so right on time. And we were going live at, well, let me see here, about 11 o'clock. And so here we are. I'm so glad you made it. I know that you are doing really important things in my hometown of Washington, D.C. So tell everybody who you are and literally like what you're doing right now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. It's exciting. It's my
Yeah.
first live.
Sweet.
First podcast, first live. So it's exciting to join you today.
Thank you.
And I'm Beatriz Guillen, and I'm the executive director of the Resource Foundation. We are an organization based in New York, but that for almost 40 years have been working, connecting donors here in the US with local organizations in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Mm.
And yeah, I have a long career of working in social impact based in the region in Latin America for almost 10 years. And now working from the US, but for the region.
And where are
And
you right now?
right now I'm at the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, at the
Yeah.
offices of the IDB lab. So they let me use an office to connect
You're
here.
important.
I'm not. I'm not. But
That's all right.
it's a busy week. It's a busy week in Washington D.C. We were saying the spring meetings of the World Bank, so everyone is here. Just listening what people are talking about, what's in the agenda, priorities, and maybe we can talk more about it later. But one of the things is that the future of work and workforce development. So upskilling, that's something we've talked about. So yeah,
Mm.
and exciting to hear that that's in the agenda.
When you said you were in DC and you said there was a lot going on, I thought you were talking about our hockey team. But
Ah,
yeah, I guess there's some other things going on there in our beautiful
there.
city as well. And we have people who are joining from all over the country, all over the world. Feel free, to hop in here in the chat. Let us know where you are. Let us know your business. Certainly, if you're in the education space. I already have one of our members of our community who's literally one of the nicest people in the world. Her name is Cynthia, who has this wonderful literacy app that is bilingual. And she's like,
Mhm.
"Can I talk to Beatrice?" I was like, "I am sure that we can make that happen." And so we'll be good and make that happen for her. So Beatrice, I was fascinated by your business, by your foundation. And before we move on, I would like you to just take a little bit of time, a little bit of time. Ken, we got somebody in the chat that we got to get out. So unfortunately, this isn't going well with that person in the chat. This is live TV. And so we've never had this happen. So we'll deal with it. Ken, let's deal with that. Beatrice, back to you. Talk about your business, please. And I just want people to understand exactly what it means to be a part of your group and what you guys do.
So there are a lot of organizations, not only in Latin America, but in the global South, doing incredible work on the ground with impact, but that sometimes they don't have the access to the resources, to the money, and they need help, to carry on with their work. So we help them. We help these organizations. We help bridge these organizations with the source of funding, and we open them the doors to funding in the US, especially. That's where we are. And the way we do that is that I don't know, probably people in the US are familiar with this concept. We're fiscal sponsors. We offer fiscal sponsorship funds for organizations. And that means that if you want to fundraise in the US, you don't need to become a 501c3, which is the legal status of a nonprofit. Um, it's the legal status of a nonprofit that is able to fundraise and get a tax discount. You don't need to do that. It can be complicated, expensive. So you can have a fiscal sponsor like us that's going to open the doors for you to fundraise in the US. So we help that, and we also help big corporates with their funding or their granting towards Latin America. Some corporates ask us help to, they ask us, we want to work with organizations that support workforce development in Mexico and Peru or Brazil. Who are these organizations? Can you help us find them? Give us recommendations. And then we also do the due diligence of the organizations, and we do the transfer of the funds, and we are able, to give them like the tax exemption. So that's what we do. That's bridging, Latin America with the US.
It's so interesting, to me, especially when we had our conversation, and now it brings back memories. Our first conversation was in Monterrey, Mexico at IFE, and we have 140-ish companies in the Ed Sales Elevation Experience who are all trying to reach schools in the United States or Latin America or Europe. And you're able to give them kind of a different perspective on how you're able to help your client do this. And I always think it's interesting to see different ways of growing your business or of reaching kids, schools, whoever you want to impact. So that doesn't change the fact, though, that it's really tough to sell in the education space. And we when we wrote what we wrote here, in your show notes, we talked about how you might be able to help people sell into K-12, to governments, to other countries. That's a lofty thing that we wrote. I get that. Can you just talk about kind of your experience and the challenges that you might have faced in all of those different venues? They're all different venues, but they're all challenging places to sell.
So I was mentioning that, one of the topics in the agenda, the World Bank meetings these days, is workforce development, or the future of work. And we've seen many of our donors focusing now, and many of donors in the US, on, upskilling, workforce development. And I tell many of our donors, it's good to work in workforce development. We need a workforce that's prepared for what's coming, but you need to start in K-12. If you reached out to some of these young people when they're 20, it's too late. But of course, it's easier. I mean, if you are a donor, you want to see results in the short term, right? So if you do training for someone to, be employed in a certain job, in 1 year, you're going to be able to see, I get, of the people I trained, 90% got a job, 90% increased their revenues. That's very rewarding. And, as a donor, you can check that's done. That's a success. Well, if you work in K-12, the results are more long-term, right? So it's more challenging. But we want to invite some of the donors to step in the K-12 space. It's long-term. Sometimes you don't see the results. But if the students don't know how to read or solve a basic problem math, I mean, chances are they are not going to be good employees in the future, right? And you can do workforce development in high school or in middle school, because you can, reduce the digital divide, give the students skills for the workforce. There's unfortunately, very few students are going to be able to get into a university in Latin America. And I guess that's true for other regions, right? So why don't provide these skills from a younger age and give them, more opportunities in the future?
Agreed. You are an authority on this. And I'd love for you to talk about the study that you guys did, and not only talk about the study, but I also think it's important for our audience to hear about why you did this study.
Mhm.
How you got the study done. Not everybody can do a study like you did. I mean, you went for the gold standard, but you can do studies with other people to give validation. So it's kind of a two-part question. Talk about how you organized this study and talk about the
Yep.
study findings.
So this is a study that we have been working with McKinsey for 6 months, and it's going to be ready in May. It's in the last phase of editing. It's been, it's been a lot of work, but it's going to be ready in May. So I want to say that because some people have commented on like, well, when you do a study and the study is about how can philanthropy, help the EdTech, education and new technology sector in Latin America. So
Right.
it's not that we are providing recommendations from, Washington or New York, McKinsey sitting on a, desk. And no. This is a study that comes from a lot of, work that we've done with all the actors in the ecosystem to get their feedback, to share with us their worries, what's working, what's not working, how could we work better to help them, right? To help them grow their businesses, to catalyze the edtech market. How can we do that, right? So we conducted more than 50 interviews with edtech startups, nonprofits, you name it, government officials, buyers, investors. So we got all their feedback. We did a survey with that over 140 edtechs replied to, and then we did a lot of desk research, of course, like looking at the numbers, etc. But what we present in the study is what we presented in the study is the result of what we found from what people have told us, who are suffering every day, what's not working, right? So we did that, like six months of like interview study, and the reason why we decided to do that is because, and we talked about this in Mexico a few months ago, it's because we saw one, that learning outcomes in Latin America are not good. Unfortunately, we are a region that's lagging behind, and so we said, okay, how can we, contribute to the education sector? And we saw on the other side, the private funding, especially venture capital funding, had dropped tremendously. So why was that happening? And what should be the role of philanthropy in helping, sort of overcome the problems that the industry was having? And so that's how the study was born, and the outcome of the study is going to be sort of a mapping of who the stakeholders are, what are the main challenges, and providing a roadmap for donors on where is it more strategic to invest their money so that it's more catalytical, it's more efficient, and has long-term impact.
One of the things that we talked about was this idea of evidence of what works, and it's a very simple concept, but I find a lot with the clients that we work with, companies in the education space, that they only do the part that you're suggesting of the evidence of what works, but they don't necessarily do the listening. They believe they have the answers. They have the evidence. And so, I think the mistake, unfortunately, that a lot of companies in education make that I work with first is that they've got the solution. They've already got the evidence. So they've got the answers, but they don't go ask the questions. to validate. You guys did it question validation. And for a lot of folks that I work with, they're educators, they're product people. So they've been in the classroom or they've been building and they know this thing is going to work. But what we teach them to do and encourage them to do is, even though you know, it's so helpful to go and listen to people and to hear from them. And so I wanted to hear from you, to go into one of those rooms or that you were having these conversations and really listening to people. Well, how was that effective for you? What did that do for you, for your study?
So, and thanks
Listening.
and thanks for the question. Yeah, listening. That's what we did. Listening and learning from the experts who are every day in the field and working in education. And I think that's I would say a few things. First, we don't have as much evidence as we think. We don't have as much evidence as we need. That's the first thing I would like to say. There are some organizations like Jacob's Foundation who are investing heavily in that, and it's very necessary to have evidence of what works and what does not work, because there's little evidence still in the EdTech, and I know that because we wanted to highlight some examples of EdTech solutions that worked, and it was difficult to find that, and that's a space for philanthropy, like what Jacobs is doing, to fund evidence. And there's another organization, education.org, that what they do is that they sort of find evidence. There's a lot of evidence that's published in the academic world that never gets into the surface of like the mainstream. So education.org helps with that, right? They're doing a great job. So we need to get better at evidence, and that helps take better decisions, right? But that's one thing. And another thing, it's like some of the studies we learned that are done on the students that use the EdTech application or platform. But it's biased because it might be that in a class, only 5% of the students use the platform. And these students are, of course, the ones that are more motivated, probably the ones that are more advanced. So the results are skewed. Do you pronounce it like that? Like skewed? So there's also like looking at the rigor of the evidence. It's also something that's important when you see the results of an initiative or a platform, etc. Then the other thing about listening, I think something that to me it's very hopeful is that for the first time we're seeing a lot of solutions that are targeting teachers. So teachers, I feel, have always been the forgotten ones. Like everyone was focusing on the students, but you might have the best solution. You think you might have the best solution, but if the teacher doesn't find it helpful, or if you don't, listen at what the teacher needs, that solution is never going to be implemented in the classroom. So I think listening to teachers is so important, and we're seeing a lot of like AI solutions focused on improving or facilitating the work of teachers. That to me, it brings me a lot of joy. I think I already mentioned, but in another conversation, Nova Escola, the work they are doing in Brazil with this AI solution that's embedded on WhatsApp, so very easy to use, and just like helping teachers like prepare their classes, reducing their admin work. So I think listening to teachers is very, very important, but also listening to government officials and the other buyers. They are the ones who are going to buy your solution, your EdTech solution. So what do they need? What's helpful for them? What can they afford? What's their budget? What's their procurement, cycles and processes? So making it easy also, and appropriate for governments, for government needs, or that's, I think, also very important. But yeah, listening is key.
This is live TV. So Beatriz and I'm going to ask Beatriz a question that we did not discuss, and I'm going to try and preface it in such a way that it does not become a political discussion. And by the way, again, this is live TV. So whatever was going on in our chat earlier is now eliminated, and that person we believe is blocked, and that wasn't cool. So I'm sorry about that. But people who are listening, who want to contribute to our chat the way we would like it to be contributed to, please put your name, where you are, and you can join the chat. So you brought up AI, you brought up the government, and you're sitting in Washington, D.C. And yesterday, President Trump signed one of his documents, one of his executive orders about AI and initiatives behind AI in the United States. And when I read that, I thought, wow, what an opportunity from somebody that I'm not really aligned with all the time. So what would you say to companies in AI, in education, who have an opportunity that is coming down through this administration that they may not agree with many of the things the administration is doing, but the administration has presented them with an opportunity? How would you deal with that? What would you tell them to do?
I have not read that executive order. I read the one about the State Department. That one I haven't read. So on that note, like I just wanted to share that. But I think
Fair enough.
I think, and that's more U.S. focused, right? And we have seen also that how in the U.S., the results also of like the learning outcomes are not great. Like we also there's also a problem in the education sector here. So if this is going to help improve education, like improve learning for the students, and at the same time is going to, I think, respect like kids' rights. Like there's been a lot of debate about like privacy for kids and not tracking. During the pandemic, we saw how many EdTech were not respecting privacy for kids. So as long as it respects and it is in compliance with all that protects kids, I think it's a great opportunity. One of the things that the pandemic left us is like in the same classroom, very different levels of learning or learning levels in a classroom.
Right.
So AI helps with that. So I think it's needed. If it's an opportunity, I would really take advantage of it because the problem is there and it's a non-partisan problem, right? A fact that a kid doesn't understand a text or cannot solve a basic problem math, it's a non-partisan, problem. So, I think I would seize the opportunity and just, try to see if we can help our kids.
We have people checking in from Lithuania, Arlington, Virginia, just down the street from you, Bogota, Colombia, all great people. I know them all. Welcome in. I'm not sure. I'm going to ask the question a little differently. Sometimes, and I think this is kind of new in the United States, but now that I'm in Mexico, I've seen the way the government works, and governments work differently in Latin America. Sometimes you got to get in bed with the government. And, it's an executive order that Trump signed with his big signature saying that AI is going to become important in K-12. Boom. That's it. That's all that really matters at this point. How do you coach people on how to work with a government that they might not align very well with? That's kind of the main question. Obviously, we can see ourselves towards the fact that we're going to help the kids, it's going to help the teachers. At the same time, you got to work with this government or the government in Brazil or the government in Mexico. I'm imagining you've had to do that before, where they weren't your favorite people, but you had to work together. How do you do that?
I think And in the US, it's different than in Latin America, in the sense that in the US, the way the education space, and maybe if someone that is listening knows better, they can write it in the comments. But it's not at the federal level that you take the decisions, right? It's more, I don't know if it's state or district level. Uh, so
Right.
um, so then you have to deal with the local government. You don't have to deal with federal government when you implement a solution. So I think that makes it easier, even like because purchasing decisions, if you're an EdTech, it's easier if you don't have to deal with the central government, but you have to deal, with the district, authority. Or so that makes it
Sure.
easier, and it takes out the problem of like working with a republic. I mean, depending on where you're working, I think
Sure.
that the main problem to me, more of the ideology of the government, it's the high turnover that you see in the public sector. That's, I think, the tragedy.
Mm.
And it goes beyond, ideology. You might disagree with the government, but you need a government counterpart to work with. And you've been able,
Mm.
to make them understand why this solution might be important, why these policies. So the lack of, continuity in educational policies, I think
Mm.
that's the tragedy. The real tragedy is that, more than, what government
Wow.
is in power, or that's from my experience. And it's not only in the education sector. I've seen this. Like, we had like a very good like water project in I'm not going to say the country, but it was just like it was Groundhog Day every other month. You would
Mm.
have to start over all, the work you have done, because there was a new, government person in charge, and so all the work you've done was just disappear.
I don't know if you have ever been in politics, but I have been in journalism, and I'm going to stop asking the question because you keep answering it so beautifully, and you have answered this question beautifully with really outgoing into kind of the nitty gritty part, And I appreciate you saying before you said the country, I'm like, tell me the country, You're like, no, I'm not going to say the
You
country,
want me? You want
So
me
I
to
appreciate
to to be jobless tomorrow?
No, no, I don't. I thought you were just about to say, "Do you want me to
No,
say it?" And
no,
I'm
no.
like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." But no, I don't want you to be jobless. Not at all. You're doing such amazing work. But one of the takeaways that I got from what you said now and then was that this is a long game, and this is a long game selling into K-12. I've been doing it since 2008. I really never sold into K-12 via the government, which probably even longer game, especially when there's turnover. So, turnover is a part of this whole thing. Where does credibility, building relationships, helping other people fit into this for you? Because it's a big part of what we believe in the Ed Sales Elevation experience in terms of building credibility, knowing what you're talking about, helping other people. Where has that fit in for you in your career, and what would you tell people about the value of it when they're selling into K-12 or governments or
I
anywhere?
think there's two things. One is honesty, in the sense that you need to be sure that what you're selling or what you're working on has a real positive impact. So, that
Mm.
you're not selling something that it's not going to work and it's just going to be a waste of resources and not have an impact on the kids. So I think the honesty of just being very convinced that what your product and what you're doing is relevant, is important, it's going to make a change. I think that's I think that's key.
Mm.
And the other thing for me, it's been, and sometimes my husband tells me that I'm too, sometimes I'm too generous, but I feel like it's being generous. You're never too generous. Like, people are going to be 100 times more generous than you've been, and more, good to you. So I don't know if you can,
Mm.
some people call it karma, I don't know, but that it's worth going the extra mile, because it's going to be the extra 2 miles then at some point, another point in your life. So just like trying to go out and helping, and even if it goes out of your immediate, business or scope of work, I think it's worth it. And
Right.
yeah, now that I've been for more than 20 years, I have more than 20 years of experience. I think I can say that with, confidence, that in the long term, again, it's worth it.
That's so funny that you say that about your husband, because my wife tells me all the time that I'm too nice. I'm like, first of all, that's why you love me, and then I'll always tell people you can't be too nice because it's coming back. So I think we're all having the same conversations. That being said, I'm sure you and I know I have been burned by being too nice
Yeah.
at times. So I have tried to be a little more strategic as I've gotten a little older with my business opportunities, with my relationships with friends and family. So can you talk about how you have built strategic partnerships for your foundation, and how do you find the right partners, not to get the quick win, because the quick wins, they don't last, but to really build a long-term relationships? How do you position people the right way so that you can work together for the long term?
Uh, and that's key when you're in business or in fundraising. Or I had someone, a friend that who told me once, if you ask a donor for money, they're going to give you advice, and if you ask them for advice, they are going to give you money. So this idea of relationship, it's called relational, I think, fundraising, or like just building relationships first. I think
Mhm.
it's key, and also to build a strategic partnership like the one we have with McKinsey, but we've done with other, organizations. It's like, what do you bring to the table? Of course, you need to bring something, and sometimes, because we are not, the Rockefeller Foundation, or we are not a big foundation, sometimes you might think, okay, so what do I have to offer? And there's always something that you can offer. It's just like finding what you can offer to the other part or the other organization. I think that's key. um, and just believing that there's something you can,
Yeah.
going back to the honesty, that what you have to offer is, it's worth it. So I think that's that. And so these building relationships first, and then it might be that a donor this year might not want to work with us, but then in a couple of years they've seen our work, and then they say, okay, I think now I trust you. 'Cause you need to earn trust, and you cannot earn trust in like two meetings. Somewhere I read somewhere that
Right.
between when you meet a donor for the first time, and this might apply to business, I'm sure, to the time you get a donation, a big donation, or maybe you close your business deal, there needs to be like 18 touch points. And it can be, a
Wow.
coffee, it can be maybe an email or a newsletter that you receive, but it's this like weaving, if you can use this image of like weaving trust until you close a deal, or you a partnership.
When you in life, and even in shows, when it rains, it pours. We kind of got on the show a little late, all good. Had whatever happened in the comments, all good. Ken cleaned it up. And then Ken, who's our producer and puts this whole show on behind the scenes, it's the middle of the night. At around 31 minutes into this show, Beatrice, what you just said about ask somebody for money and they give you advice, ask somebody for advice and they give you money, is mind blowing to me. And is so important to everything we're doing at the Ed Sales Elevation Experience. And whether it's for a nonprofit or for a for-profit, that is going to go down. I don't have a quote board. We've got Frida Kahlo on the wall here. But if I had a quote board, I would put that up. And so we will cut that in our post-production. I think that's so amazing what you said, and we'll continue to mull over that. I will be dreaming about that. So thank you. But I'm going to end this a little bit on not a low note, but we'll be honest with each other. I want to talk about Latin America, which is a place. Well, I'm in Mexico. I love this country. I love being here. Everything that it's done for my family, the people, the weather. Brent, go ahead and ask for that advice. But talk to people about a little bit more about Latin America who, for example, Cynthia, would like to be a part of what's going on in Latin America when it comes to schools. Can you talk to much of my audience who's in the United States, although we've got some Lithuanians, some Colombia here, talk to them about how they can be a part of the magic that is happening in Latin America so they can join you to raise the standards here.
Yes, and it's not a coincidence that magic realism was born in Colombia. When you live in Latin America, you understand it very well. So I think it's a region of opportunities. Young population, if you want to get more business, like it's next to the US. So, I mean, we'll see what happens now, but with nearshoring, and there's a lot of opportunity. There's, and you just need to make sure that the people are prepared for the opportunities that are coming. You cannot get a generation go to waste because they are not prepared for the new, for AI, for the new technologies that are coming. So I think it's, a moral duty that we have to provide, with the skills that they will need to succeed. And I think for the US, for the audience in the US, I think there's very little. I know the philanthropic, flows, and it's very little the amount of funds that go to Latin America from the US compared to other regions. And Latin America is such a strategic, region for the US. So, and sometimes it has a bit of a bad press. And we should be able to change the narrative and be able to share like what the region is and can do for the US, in terms of the potential for like commercial partnerships and for training all these people that can help. I think it was in 2023 that for the first time Mexico became the number one input supplier to the US, surpassing China. So you have that, and so and all the creativity that comes from the region. I think it's just like I would encourage people just to get more interested and more knowledgeable of what's happening in the region, and that's a lot of what we do at the Resource Foundation is bridging knowledge in terms of like who are the actors that are doing innovation in the EdTech space, or we work in other sectors, but it's just a matter of finding them.
I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to try and word it the right way. And I preface it with, again, I love Latin America. I love Mexico. I have a 2003 Jeep Wrangler. It's a piece of crap car, but I love it. And I've got this wonderful guy who lives here who works on my car. And we call my car Javi. He's had Javi for a few days. He was working on something. And he told us it was going to be 1,800 pesos. All right, I don't know if we need it, but we'll do it. And then he texted me last night. He said, we're good, we're done. It's 3,000 pesos. And I'm like, dude, Saul, you told me 1,800 and I didn't even want to do it. And now you're telling me $3,000? And we went back and forth, but I was very careful because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Feelings are very big here. And so we finally agreed on what was more right. And I said, man, just let me know. Just reach out. Just let me know that maybe you underestimated the cost. and you might have made a mistake. And so the reason I bring this up is because I've had to learn over the last 4 years how to work day in and day out in Mexico on something as little as an engine in a car. Talk about like maybe some of the challenges that people have to think about of working in different cultures. I know the Mexican one because I've lived here, but I'm sure it's different in Brazil versus Colombia. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with poco a poco, son las cosas de la vida. I love all of those things, but those are hard lessons for a gringo to learn. Trust me, I had to learn them. So can you talk about the cultural differences that people have to recognize as well?
Yeah, and even inside a country, like if I lived for many years in Colombia, and the person who lives we have here, I think, Austin, he's based in Colombia. I don't know where he's based, but someone inside Colombia,
Bogota.
someone in Bogota, yeah, has nothing. A Bogotano has nothing to do with someone in Cartagena or Barranquilla So
Yeah.
generalizing is never a good good idea. And also, I mean, for people who are not from the US coming to the US, it's also a cultural shock. There's many things that for us are like, it's difficult to get around some things, right?
Totally.
In the US. Um, so yeah, I don't know, like, I think trust and building trust is something that is very important in Latin America, and that requires time. So probably if you want like more the short term, that's not the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Just like try to build that trust first, and then things uh, will will go the way you want. I don't know, like
Yeah.
um, but also, like, yeah, I wouldn't want to generalize because it's so different in every country and every yeah, Mexico has nothing to do with a Mexican with an Argentinian. Like, there couldn't be more different. And it's
Yeah.
something that sometimes when you live there, and I'm originally from Spain, so
Mhm.
and I have to be, I'm also guilty of that you see Latin America as a whole. But then when you live there, and I'm sure it has happened to you, Josh, is you realize about all the nuances that are there. And just like I would say, don't try to rush it. But
Mm.
I think in every country that I've lived, it takes a year to get to understand a country. So wait for a year before,
Yeah.
just wait for a year, and then you'll learn about the country you're in, the character of the people, how things work. And yeah, but it just takes time anywhere
Yeah.
you go, anywhere you live, right?
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And Austin is agreeing with you as well. Jared Aldham. So Jared, I can't wait to catch up with you, man, because, I'm on, Beatrice, like when Jared and I worked at this TV station
Yeah.
in the middle of Virginia, which happens to be in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is the poultry capital of the United States. Really smells interesting.
I
That's
didn't
where we
know.
work. Um, things went wrong all the time on TV. Uh, and Jared, we had something go wrong here, but we dealt with it. And so Jared and I have more stories than you can imagine of things going wrong on live TV. So Jared, nice to see you again, and let's connect. I agree with you. Of course, I guess the part that I want to communicate to the audience is that just don't expect. There's so much opportunity in Latin America. I see it. I'm here. You're telling. And you're going to, through this study, explain where it is. You just can't expect that the way things happen in America is the way things happen everywhere. And I think that we, unfortunately, as gringos, I'll use that term, that's what, we are, that we believe that when we go to places, it's just going to operate the same.
Yeah.
And that was a thing I had to learn, and that's a thing I watch a lot of people learn down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, to your point, there's the opportunity, And then there's also the part of that you have to learn as well.
Yeah.
And there you go. Austin's right. Relationships, relationships, relationships. And then maybe you can mention business. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. 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 Or business relationship. See, so always, you need to instill a little bit of a personal touch, and yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we have to learn. That's what I think a lot of people have to learn. I don't know what it's like doing business in Europe, but I know it's like being an American and coming here and doing business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For example, I had to learn from my wife when we've been together for 14 years, and she would say good morning to me every morning. When I wake up, I don't say good morning. Like, we just get going, but now I say good morning. Everybody I see, it's good afternoon. I look at my, it's good evening. It's greetings. It's getting to know people. And that's something that people have to learn who aren't necessarily from America. And I want to make sure that our audience knows there's opportunity, but things happen a little bit differently as well.
Yeah, but isn't that beautiful? I think, the human connection, yeah, I've had to learn, because coming from where I come in Europe also, that wasn't that way. And I think it's a learning that I'll bring with me forever. So I think it's great.
I can't think of anything more beautiful, to tell you the truth. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. We went to some places I didn't expect us to go, especially bringing in the politics, but you happen to be in DC, and then just talking about culture. And I hope that, for our audience, they understand the opportunities that are there and that they do some really great work. This is John Greiner. John's a member of our group, and John is from the Deep South, and now he lives in Naples, Italy. So talk about a guy who's been from one place to another. He's in Naples, and this guy is this beautiful Southern accent and attitude, that you just want to like hang out with this guy. So we've got a lot of people from calling in from different places, which is really cool. So I appreciate you joining. It's almost 2:00 where you are, so it's probably lunchtime. If you're still on that schedule, let people know, please, like, how, if you like, how they can get in touch with you. Can they support the Resource Foundation? What can people do to help, especially who've got Latin America in their hearts?
Sure. And thank you for the invitation for this time. I'm on LinkedIn, so they can reach me there, and then we can connect further. And we always appreciate support for the Resource Foundation and the work that we do. This work that I was mentioning, of like getting to know who's doing what. That at the end, you need resources to do that. So we always look for support, and we love the people who join our cause. And who see the potential of Latin America and want to contribute to develop it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining, everybody. You can follow up clearly with Beatriz. We'll be back here next Thursday. John will join us, and we'll be talking about slow burn methods, because it's that time of year, Beatriz, where a lot of people in our audience need to be closing deals for fall of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really great and important time. So Austin connected, super nice guy down in Bogota, who hopefully you can get a chance to know. So thank you for coming into our community for this time. Thank you for being a part of it, and for dropping all this wisdom on us.